Hi everyone, it's Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali. I want to thank you for allowing me to hold space with you. I want to thank you for sharing a few minutes of your time. I want to thank my Native American brothers and sisters whose land that I currently reside on, the Pamunkey and the Mattaponi. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for your leadership and for bringing together so many incredible leaders. Some who have been doing the work for decades and others who are newer to the space, but the commitment is there to being able to make sure that positive change happens. You know, we have in this transformational moment an opportunity to create foundational change, to create systemic change. And what I mean by that is that we have in this moment an opportunity to reevaluate those elements of the past that have not been helpful, that have been destructive, that have been impactful, but also to take and remember those elements that have created the opportunities for folks to be able to move forward and to hold on to those and to make sure that we are letting go of those things and those elements that have not been helpful. It's important for us to be able to call that out and then to be able to move forward in thinking about foundational change. We also have to take a look at our organizations to make sure that they look like and that they represent the communities that we actually serve. And that means that everyone from our boards to our senior level staff to mid-management to newer people who are coming in, that we have to take a hard look at that and be willing to make the changes that are necessary to be able to navigate the 21st century. We also have to have real talk about the policies that have often been in place that have played a role in many of the impacts that are going on both in our country and across the planet, and be willing to do the hard work to make sure that we are interjecting what's necessary to not just fill the gaps, but to build a strong foundation for the work that we need to do. That work, whether it is addressing environmental injustices or addressing the climate crises that we find ourselves dealing with, or also making sure that it is food justice or housing insecurity or homelessness, all these various items that come together often with public health impacts and mental health impacts. And thinking critically about how do we, with a 21st century paradigm, address both the mind, the body, and the spirit. That is going to require for us to also think very critically about some of our ethics and how in the past they have played a role in the justification of not investing in certain communities, of allowing certain communities to be sacrifice zones. Some may say, well, Mustafa, what do you mean by that? Well, sacrifice zones are where we place everything that nobody else wants, and then we disinvest in those areas. And many oftentimes those are areas of color where our most vulnerable communities are. They're lower wealth communities. They may be lower wealth white communities, and of course they can be where indigenous folks also live. So we have to think critically about that, and we also in this moment have to think about our values and how those play a role in our priority setting, in our decision making, and in the steps that are going to be so critically necessary. You know, there was an amazing writer and activist by the name of James Baldwin. He's known not only in the United States, but internationally. And he once said that if I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things that you don't see. Think about that for a second. How many times do folks just not see some of the things that are going on? Sometimes intentionally not seeing, and sometimes because we just don't want to have to deal with the sets of impacts that are happening. You know, when I think about in the environmental context of some of the challenges that we have in front of us, I also think about the opportunities, and that if we are willing to do the work, if we are willing to build authentic collaborative partnerships, how we can change dynamics. That's the beauty of this moment. We have the technology. We have a number of people who are now being educated on the issues that if we truly want to prioritize things, then we can make change even in the face of some very, very tough situations that folks are dealing with. In the United States, we have over 100,000 people who are dying prematurely every year from air pollution. Internationally, over 6 million people are dying from air pollution. That air pollution is doing all kinds of things, causing cancer clusters, liver and kidney diseases, breathing difficulties. In this COVID-19 moment, having one of these lung diseases makes you more vulnerable to a number of hospitalizations and infections and loss of life. Y'all do me a favor. Everyone take a deep breath of air. I want you to hold on to it like it is your last breath. Now let it out, because we know that whether we're talking about in Detroit, Michigan, in the United States, or the Manchester community that's in Houston, Texas, or if we're talking about New Delhi in India, or if we're talking about in China, or a number of other locations across our planet, that we have so many brothers and sisters who are being impacted from air pollution. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about how that air pollution is also connected to what's going on with the climate crisis. It's amazing the work that we still have to do to be able to protect the fact that people need to be able to take a drink of water. In the United States, over the last decade, 60 million people have had to deal with unsafe drinking water. And over 3 million people die every year from dealing with unsafe drinking water across our planet. We've seen a number of the different diseases that are associated with that. We've seen some of the suffering that folks are dealing with, and we also know that we can make change happen to address that issue. I want you all to do me a favor. I want you to count to 10, and I'll call it out for you. 1, 2. In that 10 seconds, someone just died because of dirty water. We often see a number of situations happening across our planet. In the United States, we've seen issues like in Flint, Michigan, where children were being impacted from lead in their water. We've seen folks walking in human waste. We've seen situations where there are other toxins that are inside of the water. And of course, that plays out across our planet, where no matter almost whatever country you might be in, that there are individuals who are struggling to be able to have a drink of clean, affordable water in many instances. In this moment, we have the opportunity to make real change happen. Now, you are probably asking yourself, maybe just a few, can we truly make change happen? Can we really be able to move forward? My grandmother says that you have power unless you give it away. We've seen how power, when men and women of good conscience come together, how real change can happen, even in the face of great adversity. Whether we're talking about the women's suffrage movement here in the United States, and of course, even in the international context, how men used to say that women shouldn't have the right to vote, that they shouldn't be able to own land, that they shouldn't have a voice in the process. But we've seen how change has happened. We still have work to do, but change is happening. We've seen in relationship to the civil rights movement in the United States and beyond, how black people were not allowed the right to vote or to own land or to be able to do a number of different things that should just be a part of a human right. And how, when folks came together, we were able to begin that long journey toward justice. We've also seen most recently with the Black Lives Matter movement across the planet, folks coming together of all races and hues saying that the 21st century has to look different. And we have to make sure that everyone is protected, that everyone is honored. And most recently, we've seen with the environmental movement how so many young people across the planet are using their energy and innovation and ingenuity, who are willing to put their bodies on the line to make sure that real change can happen, and how elders are joining in also to say that we can actually get engaged, that we can actually make real change happen. That is power. And we're going to need that power because we understand that the climate crisis is going to present some very difficult challenges, but the sets of opportunities are even larger. We know the hurricanes and the typhoons that continue to grow in intensity and the impacts that happen to folks, both on their minds and their bodies. We understand that these biblical floods that continue to happen across our planet, the wildfires that are happening in Siberia, that are happening in Brazil, that are happening in Australia, and a number of other locations across our country and across our planet, that we've got to get engaged to make sure that we're addressing what's happening. These extreme heat events that are stressing people's bodies to the limit, and the temperatures continue to rise month after month, year after year, setting new records. We have power to get engaged and make change happen. We can use our power to make sure that the new clean economy that will literally create millions upon millions of jobs, that everyone across our planet can fully participate in that. We can make sure that our most vulnerable communities, those who have often been unseen and unheard and disinvested in, can make sure that they are not getting left behind. We can make sure that there's truly a just transition. We have the opportunity in this moment to be transformational, but that means that we have to break down the silos. We can no longer have, communities against communities, or governments not connecting with communities in an effective way, in an equitable way. We have to also make sure that countries are finding opportunities to actually work together. Dr. King said that we come to these shores in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. I want you to think about that. In relationship to the pandemic that we've gone through, it didn't matter where you were across the planet, everyone could be and were impacted. When we think about the climate crisis that we have in front of us, that we know that everyone is going to have to figure out ways to be able to navigate this. But if we get serious now, we can stop many of the impacts that will come. We can address and slow down many of the challenges that will be in front of us. And we can also make sure that we are investing in the places that need the resources the most. We can make sure that we're strengthening our healthcare system. We can make sure that there's a new set of education that's happening there, but also that the places that need clinics and hospitals actually have the resources that are necessary. We can make sure that we change our transportation systems so that we are no longer impacting through pollution the communities who have done the least but are carrying the most burden. We have an opportunity in this moment to rebuild our housing stock so that it is prepared for the 21st century, and we can strengthen crumbling infrastructures both in the United States and across the planet. But it requires us to embrace our power. It requires us to break down silos. It requires us to build authentic, collaborative partnerships where we're not only just hearing people, where we're not only just inviting people to sit around the table, but that we are also making sure that everyone has the opportunity to frame out this new direction. We have power unless we give it away. And that's why the time that you're spending here and the information that you're garnering, those partnerships that you're building are going to be so critical as we move forward throughout this decade. This is our moment for transformational change. I'm Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali. I thank you for allowing me to share a few minutes with you, but I thank you even more for the transformational work that I know each and every one of you are going to join into. So thank you so much.